This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Hello and welcome again to Midco Sports Magazine. We dig into the past a little bit this month and honor the future with 3 stories of lasting legacy. We will take you to Brookings, South Dakota, where Coughlin-Alumni Stadium is gone, but not forgotten, as the Jackrabbits start a new football era at South Dakota State. In Grand Forks, North Dakota, what started as a way for wounded Warriors to deal with a difficult past has turned into a way for them to keep on contributing to the future. And we start with the South Dakota Rodeo legend. 60 years ago, Tibbs was one of the biggest stars in any sport in the country, a rock star in his time who just happened to ride saddle broncs like nobody else. And his story is being retold now by a documentary filmmaker who also has South Dakota roots. Here is Carla Metz with the story.
The American dream lends itself to every generation. It's the never-tired tale of overcoming obstacles and unlikely characters rising from the ashes of a misfortunate social standing. Those stories are countless in sports, but there's only one about an athlete rising from the dust on the backs of unforgiving bred broncs.
What's appealing about Tibbs? What isn't appealing about Tibbs, I guess, is kind of the question.
Originally from Midland, South Dakota, Justin Kaler works full-time at a production company in Denver, Colorado. But in his spare time, he's an award-winning director and documentarian. His newest undertaking is Tibbs' story.
Gene Autry was the singing cowboy. Roy Rogers was the king of cowboys, but Casey was the most beloved.
Tibbs was a true American cowboy raised outside of Fort Pierce, South Dakota during the Great Depression. In a time where the nation had trouble standing, Casey found refuge in rodeo, which at the time was viewed as a withering, wayward sport.
Rodeo was struggling before Casey come onto the scene. There was a lot of people that looked down on rodeo. In its early days, it just didn't have a very good reputation. The producers of rodeos really didn't have a good reputation. Even the cowboys had a bad reputation. So I think when Casey knew he had the ability, which was just, I think, a God-given talent, he knew he could take it to the next level.
Casey's life story has appeared in a handful of publications over the past few decades, but his journey has never made it on screen, which is why Kaler decided to dedicate over 2.5 years gathering footage and putting together countless interviews about America's #1 cowboy to help reintroduce Casey to a new generation.
If he was in the sport now, he would be a media darling. They would follow him from the time he hit the building to the time he walked out because they never know what he was going to do.
Once I knew no one had done a film on him, I jumped on it because I was just afraid someone was going to beat me to the punch. But I also knew it was going to be a lot of work and a huge challenge because this guy lived one heck of a life.
Casey was a sports celebrity as much as anyone could be in the 1950s. He captivated audiences with an unmatched talent in bronc riding, but he won their hearts with his unique ability to breathe color back into rodeo. Purple, to be exact.
And I've seen pictures where it's Casey and like 5 or 6 guys, and it's white shirt, blue jeans, white shirt, blue jeans, white shirt, blue jeans, purple, purple. He stood out, but he had the talent too. I don't think if you were to not have the talent and walk out into that arena in the 1950s wearing purple silk shirts and purple chaps, and the whole getup, you may not have been taken very seriously. But when he rode broncs the way he did, hey, you had to respect that.
Between 1949 and 1955, Casey won 6 World Saddle Bronc riding titles, along with 2 all-around championships and 1 bareback championship. Casey was an ambassador for the sport and stayed heavily involved promoting rodeo until he died in 1990 at the age of 60. In rodeo, bronc riders are given a score on their ability to spur, and the horse is given a score on how hard they buck. Those elements seem complex when you're on the back of an uncontrollable force, but for Casey, life inside the ring was simple. It was outside where his story became complicated.
Still to this date, he's the youngest Saddle Bronc champion in history, 19 years old. And a couple years later, he was on the cover of Life magazine. He was at Madison Square Garden. I mean, his fame happened like that, so fast. And he came from nothing. I don't know if he truly knew how to handle that because it happened so fast and he didn't really have anything. I feel like he almost felt bad that he was making all this money, that he didn't really know what to do with it.
Kaler requested interviews from some of Casey's closest friends and family, and it was during one conversation with Steve Ford, President Ford's son, that Kaler understood a little more as to why a film had not been done before.
He said to me, he goes, "Listen, people have been calling me for the past 25 years about books, about movies, about documentaries, about all this stuff about Casey Tibbs," because he was very close to him and people know that. And he goes, "What makes you any different than those people? What have you done that's any different?" And I took him step by step of what I've done. And once I finished, that 30, 45 minutes later, he goes, "You have gotten farther than anybody has ever gotten."
The documentary contains exclusive footage of Casey, but it was also an important detail for Kaler to include the newest generation of rodeo in the film. So he sought out one of South Dakota's most talented bronc riders, Cole Elsher, to reenact Casey for a few scenes.
Justin, the producer, called me and just kind of gave me the rundown of what they're hoping to do with the film and said that a couple people had mentioned my name as maybe being the person to play the role, and so we just visited for a while and decided it'd be pretty fun and we'd try to work on it.
Both Elsher and Kaler channeled their inner Casey Tibbs for the film, which helped Elsher prepare for his role. And for Kaler, that inner voice helped him keep direction through the final scene.
Even though I didn't know Casey, there's times you feel, I've gotten to know so much about him, I feel like I do know him, as weird as that may sound. And I sometimes think to myself, what would he say about me putting this into the film? And I think most everything in the film, he would be like, "Yep, that's my life." You maybe didn't cover everything, because that would be like a 5-hour marathon movie, but he's like, within that 90 minutes of the film, I think you covered my life story, and you covered it well.
But what's a documentary without a name? The title is a dynamic 2-word combination used to describe Casey's riding style.
His bronc riding style was just revolutionary. No one had really seen it before, and that was one of the biggest draws, is he was so graceful. A lot of people, it was like a dance with him and the horse. Before him, bronc riders tried to use brute strength to control a bronc, which is impossible. I mean, it's like, but that's what they did. They just held on for dear life. Well, Casey, he went with the horse. It was a dance, it was graceful, and people said it was like he floated atop a horse.
It's Kaler's hope that floating horses will appeal to crowds, much like Casey did not so long ago.
He is a figure that I think, if we can get this film rolling and it picks up steam, I really believe people will be drawn to him again, which is really cool. And that's what he was trying to do in the 50s. And I hope we can channel his desires and his ambitions, and that's really what I'm trying to channel into this film, and keep his legacy alive.
And joined now by Carla Metz, and this is going to be so fun, especially for people in South Dakota, North Dakota to watch. But it's got tragedy, glory. I mean, it's going to be a fascinating story. And Justin, the filmmaker, has been working on it for almost 3 years, right? Is it almost done?
I wish that I could tell you the release date. All I can say is it's going to be in the near future, but it is a highly anticipated film, especially for the rodeo community, just to get Casey Tibbs' story out there. One thing that the producer Justin is working on is trying to fund the rest for this documentary, because it does take a lot of money. A lot of money goes into this, and all these people that work so hard have to get paid. But you can find a GoFundMe page on Facebook under Floating Horses if you'd like to give, so that this film can get out there pretty quickly.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot. Carla Metz. Well, up next, a stadium that no longer stands, but a field and a feeling that live on. The heart and the history of Coughlin-Alumni Stadium in Brookings when we come back.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
South Dakota State's football team will open play in 2016 in a brand new stadium. And technically, it's a renovation of the old Coughlin-Alumni Stadium. and there are still traces of that old stadium throughout Brookings. David Brown shows us how a field that will never be stepped on again still gathers plenty of traction.
It's often said nostalgia helps us deal with transitions. Even when the transition is new and exciting, it only seems to increase the yearning for what once was. Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium could be a game changer at South Dakota State, but Coughlin-Alumni Stadium was a game changer.
When the Coughlin-Alumni was built, it had to be way ahead of its time and had to be the best place around in the conference.
Well, actually, I thought it was amazing because, you know, they had the huge cement bleachers. You know, going up, they had those with the big press box on top. I've never seen anything like that except on television.
Opened in 1962, Coughlin-Alumni Stadium entrenched many of the same feelings people currently have on the new stadium, with fans holding a firm belief it could be something special.
You know, the areas were a lot more open and you had a place you could go anywhere around the stadium, basically. From the time I was old enough to know what sports was, I was always up to SDSU games.
Growing up in Brookings, Tim DeWitt idolized Jackrabbit athletics, and he wanted to find some way to get involved. In the 1980s, he finally got his chance and became SDSU's equipment manager, a position he held for 30 years.
It was something that was exciting, it was something different every day, and it was something that I just loved to do.
Tim retired last year, but he still takes some part-time work cleaning up athletic facilities all around campus. For him, it's simply a matter of pride.
We mow, we line fields, we set up for games, you know, we do trash details, we fix baseball, softball, just everything it takes to keep the grounds up and all the teams going.
To the far side, handoff Uyghur, going behind the right side, has an opening, Uyghur, look out! 40, 50, 40, he's gone, touchdown Jackrabbits!
It's our history. It's what made this place special. The reason people keep coming to games is because of what was developed before us.
Just like Tim, Jeff Holm is a Brookings native, who's now working at the very school that first piqued his athletic interests.
I don't know if it's possible to grow up in Brookings and not be a fan of the Jacks.
And if you were a fan of the Jacks, you had to be a fan of Coughlin-Alumni, even with all of its little quirks, like a very uneven playing surface.
You could stand on one sideline, look across at the other sideline at someone. If we were looking at each other, we'd only see ourselves from the waist up because that's how big the crown was.
But no matter the perspective, Coughlin-Alumni's memories are still very visible. Pieces of the old stadium still live on outside the confines of the field, including a chunk of the old end zone proudly presented at Tim's retirement party.
It's some dirt with some grass on it, but it's the memory of it, you know. You'll never see that again in the new stadium. I'll always have it. Even if it ends up where I stick it in a bucket someday, I can say, hey, here's the turf. Here's the end zone turf from Coughlin-Alumni Stadium. How many people have that?
Tim waters and fertilizes the grass to keep it as fresh as possible, while Jeff keeps buckets of the old dirt around with the idea of possibly planting new grass or maybe even some flowers someday.
People love to look back and remember those items because those are good days.
Other pieces of memorabilia like chairbacks and bleachers are scattered all over South Dakota. It's the peak of nostalgia before the reality of novelty sets in. Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium is home now, and it is for the better. The brand new digs will undoubtedly be a selling point for future recruits. And turf has statistically proven to be easier on players' bodies than grass. But it won't be easy to let go of Coughlin-Alumni, because it's not easy being green or keeping green.
It was time that grass was getting more and more difficult to maintain in the northern climate and trying to keep on top of it. We needed to move on. We weren't doing the correct things for our student athletes and our spectators that we needed to do to provide them the environment that is expected these days.
You're so proud, it just makes you cry. You're like, it's here. We're going to be tops now. We're going to be top dog now. The new stadium wouldn't be here without Coughlin. Without the memories of Coughlin and what was done in our university to promote athletics and to do things at Coughlin, it wouldn't be here. So you have to keep that in your memory.
And joined now by David Brown, and I love this story. I mean, I'm connected. I'm a South Dakota State guy, maybe not so much as Jeff and Tim to Coughlin-Alumni Stadium, but love this story. And there's some intention to keep parts of the old Coughlin in some fashion as a display, either inside or outside the new stadium, right?
Yeah, Jeff Holmes said it will be some sort of display inside the new Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium. What that entails, I'm not exactly sure, but there will be certain Coughlin alumni artifacts, whether it's old bleachers or chairbacks or maybe even some of that dirt and grass you saw.
Very cool. The Coughlin is Charles Coughlin. He graduated from SDSU in 1909. He was an athlete there. We've got an old rendering here of what they intended, the original rendering for the original Coughlin Alumni Stadium.
It sort of reminds me of the current LA Coliseum where the Rams play now. So it's always interesting just to see original visions and then how they actually end up.
And really looking forward to the new Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium for the Jackrabbits. Brownie, appreciate it. David Brown. Up next, a team of wounded warriors who have overcome their own loss by helping young kids deal with theirs. A softball story to soothe your soul. Coming up next.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, sometimes we start or do something designed to help heal ourselves, and then we find out that by helping others, that is the best medicine of all. Well, Marty Mueller has the story on a softball team of wounded warriors who keep on giving, although they have already given so much.
No matter what happens to you in your life, you can be okay. You can make it. You can be extraordinary if you want. You just can't give up.
The war in the Middle East has touched a lot of lives. Some far more than others. For those lucky enough to return home, life isn't always easy.
There was an individual that was aware of the guys that were coming back from Iraq that were blown up or, lost a limb. And the military really didn't have anything for them. So he was looking at a way to try to get their spirits up, get them together, do something that they love and they enjoy. So he put in to have a 2-week camp put together. So in this 2-week camp, he brought together these guys and they played, and after the 2 weeks, there was really nothing else for them. So he put together an exhibition game with a team down in Florida, and next thing you know, it went nationwide, and pretty soon, they're playing 40, 50 events, in a year.
Since forming, the team has played games all over the country, putting on a show for spectators while also helping countless service members both on and off the team. But somewhere along the line, there was a shift in the group's goal, from assisting combat veterans to helping all people with amputations.
The mission kind of changed. It changed from building up the player to the inspiration of the public into now we host a kids camp every year. And so now I say our mission is about the kids. It's about what we do for the kids, what we do for the general public. And there's still that small portion that, betters ourselves or brings us together for the camaraderie.
The kids camp travels the country visiting a new location once each year. The goal? To show kids with amputations they are no different than anyone else.
We fly in 20 to 24 kids, their parents, all expenses paid, and they train with us for a week. And after that week, we have an exhibition game between the two. We split up the kids, we have an exhibition game between the two, and it's inspirational to watch on my side. My first kids camp was last year, and I thought it was an inspiration playing against them. And then when I played with them, it was a bigger inspiration. And at my first kids camp, I was just in awe watching the kids with limitations. And I don't even want to say limitations because it's not. It's just kids living and doing what they can and making the most of what they've got. Which is kind of which our motto is, life without a limb is limitless. You can do whatever you want. It's about overcoming adversity.
With the kids now the inspiration, everyone gets a chance to learn. And after 4 years, the kids camp has proven to be an amazing success, enhancing the health and welfare of all involved.
When you first get there, it's interesting to watch because when you first get there, there's 20 kids running around and every kid is just off on his own. And the next day you get up and the kids have formed their little groups. So there's, 10 groups of 2. The next day you get up, there's 2 groups of 10. And then finally that last day, they're all together, they're all talking. You can't separate the kids. And one of my most inspirational was a little kid. His name's Landis. He was a quad amputee. He was one above the knee, one below the knee, and then both arms are just about at the hands. And I watched that kid hit the ball out of the infield more than some of my own guys can hit the ball. And just to see his spirit and just the smiles on his face and the accomplishments that he had, it's just an awesome feeling that I could be part of that.
It was always this team's goal to help its wounded service members. The focus may have shifted to benefiting kids, but an argument can certainly be made that the kids help the veterans just as much as the veterans help them.
To see the smile on their faces, they step out there and they see the crowd, everybody's cheering and they're out there moving around, and it's priceless. I mean, you can't put a price on something that heartful.
And joined now by Marty Mueller in Grand Forks. And Marty, you talked about how this team travels all over the country, but these wounded warriors, where are they themselves from? Are they all from the same branch of the military?
These athletes are from all over the country, actually, and they served in different branches of the military and were even deployed at different times. But they all have a couple things in common, and that's that they want to continue playing a sport that they love and serve the community while they do it.
Right, thank you, Marty Mueller in Grand Forks. And thank you for watching Midco Sports Magazine. You can find this episode and all the episodes of Midco Sports Magazine on YouTube.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.